Hey guys, welcome back to another episode of Tea Time, the podcast. And I know it's been a minute that I've done like a solo style episode, so welcome. I hope you guys like the new setup. If you are listening on Spotify or any podcasting app, I'm actually doing a video recording simultaneously as well. So this episode will be found on YouTube. So let me know if you like the new setup. But we are here for a solo episode. And on today's solo episode, we are talking about building a sustainable business. Now, what do I mean by that? Oftentimes, when you hear sustainable business, it's usually in the context of money. It's usually in terms of profitability, where you are building a business that is constantly at least bringing cash flow in. Hopefully, you have profit margins, etc., etc., and the business can sustain itself. Hence the term sustainable business. But there's also another aspect of sustainability that only comes up when we're talking about burnout, right? Long story short, it's really hard to build a sustainable business when you, the founder, is burnt out. Burnout is a recipe for disaster. You can't build a sustainable business when you are burnt out because it's not going to keep running unless you have everything in place and you have a team and all of these things. But the real truth is most of us are either solopreneurs, small business owners with small teams, even persons who have teams. You can become burnt out. CEOs, C-suite execs are often, their health is often suffering. And I know for myself that that's just not what I see for myself. A big part of why I got into business is because I wanted more freedom in my life. I think a lot of us could relate to that, and freedom looks different for everybody. But I know for the most part, for those of us who are, very much still attached to hustle culture or very much go, 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 and you might not be as laid back of a personality as I am, you still value your health and your well-being because it's very difficult to show up and be your best self if you can't get out of bed because you are dealing with health issues, aches, pains, chronic illnesses, unexplainable pain because because your body is screaming out for attention. So that is where my headspace is at lately. And for those of us who have had businesses for at least the length of time that I have, it's been about 8 years now doing this 100% full time. That means that's been 8 years of my life, which obviously means that we are getting older and we aren't as young as we once were. I am not as young as I once was. If you are even new to this, maybe you're in your first, second, or third year of business, you have to think about the long term, right? And it's always better to set yourself up for those years down the road today from now. All right, so let me tell you all a bit of a story time. When I now left school, I had like absolutely no work experience. I needed a job, right? I wasn't fortunate enough to have my parents in my life. I wasn't fortunate enough to just have a plan for my life. Most children or young adults come from, whether it's a two-parent home or a single-parent home, they usually have either the two parents or one parent. And usually when you have responsible parents, no shade, but this is just my truth, it's usually a path. There's usually some level of guidance, right? Everybody starts with the same path. You go to elementary school, you go to primary school, middle school, high school, and after that, it's typically, okay, which way do you want to go? Do you want to pursue college or skills? Like there's a certain trajectory. For me, there was no plan. I went through the system like everyone else, but then when it comes to that part of like figuring out where you want to go, there was really nobody guiding me or saying like, Cassia, what are you going to do? This, that, and the other. These were things I figured out on my own. These are things I figured out by having good teachers. And one of my teachers that was very instrumental in my life, that's how I discovered I wanted to get into graphic design. But the point of the matter is there was no one guiding me, showing me the paths that I could take and how I could pursue further education. I just really needed a job. I needed to figure out that now that I am about to be a full grown adult, 18 years old soon, right around the corner, I needed to find a job. And of course, when you now leave school with just a high school leaving certificate and not much experience under your belt, sure, you can find a job, but it's a lot harder. Of course, when you have connections, you can't get a job. So I had a friend at the time I was modeling, and she was like, "Hey, I know the guy who could probably get you a job like in admin, something secretarial, something very entry level in an insurance company." At the time, they didn't really have much vacancies. They're always looking for insurance agents. I reluctantly was like, "Sure, I'll do it," because I wanted a job. And when she put me onto the guy, we spoke, etc., etc. Remember, I am young. I now come out into the working world. I am just like so timid, so like, it's just so new. And I just felt so eaten up by why just a little conversation he was able to just tell me, "Oh, you can't be an insurance agent," kind of vibe. "You are just too laid back." And while I understood what he meant, it just getting that kind of feedback as your first feedback in the real world, it was just like, wow. I mean, I didn't want to do this anyway because it just really wasn't a fit for me. But I will never forget those words that I'm too laid back. And the fact of the matter was, it was the truth. I have a pretty laid back personality, and in the right circumstances, I can shine through, which is why careers like graphic design, web design, and certain types of careers align with my personality. Hence why I'm here today. So bringing it back, everything is just this full circle moment where it's been this journey of constant self-discovery and finding what you truly align with over and over again. It has been this reoccurring theme that I believe in, this holistic approach to life where we can make money, but we can also take care of ourselves. I believe that we can have both. We might not be able to have both all of the time. There's a time for grind mode and, get the work done. I pull those all-nighters, get it done. But then I make sure to integrate, notice I said integrate here and not balance, like I said earlier, because there is ways that you can integrate that balance into your life, especially if you are a freelancer, a small business owner, you have your own business, or you have a flexible remote job. It is very possible for you to do this once you become aware and you decide that you want to make a change, that you decide that you don't want to continue running yourself into the ground. So it's really important for me. It's really one of my core values to integrate wellness in our day-to-day business, and we build that in through our systems, through our boundaries, because it's so easy to get derailed. And then it's like, what did we build this for? What did we start this for? Like, if I wanted to be burnt out, if I wanted to be on everyone's demands and everyone's beck and call, then I just get a 9 to 5, right? And that's no shade to 9 to 5s. It's just that you have a little more control and flexibility when it comes to the day-to-day run-ins of your day. I also believe that when you are a better you can build a better business. So think of it like this. If I am not at my best, how can I build something at my best? You'd have to be at your best. So that's how I correlate it. Like, my business success is 100% riding on me feeling happy, whole, energized. Now, by all means, you could build a successful career and not be taking care of yourself. We see it every single day. But then what happens? You develop ailments, you develop chronic illnesses, you develop high health bills, or you just kind of people who just kind of drop down one day and then they don't know why, and they are not well, or later on in life you don't see the effects until later down the road. We wonder why so many people are developing these lifestyle diseases, cancer, all of these different things. And I just personally don't feel like it's worth it. Like, for me, my health is my wealth. That has been something I have always appreciated, even when I was in my early 20s, when you feel unstoppable. You feel, when you are in those adult years of your lives where you have the most energy, you feel like you'll have this energy for the rest of your life. And for some reason, I just had this awareness that even though in my 20s, I was like every other 20-year-old, where I feel like I'm at my best, I'm at my peak, but I knew it wouldn't be like that forever. And I would always wake up every single day being thankful for my health, because I can't show up for myself. I can't show up for anyone else. I can't be there for my children if I am laying in bed ill. One of the worst things as a mother is being ill. One of the worst things as a mother is to just feel helpless, because you may even just simply be unwell with the common cold. It's not a fun place to be, because the demands to show up don't go away. As we know, being a mother is a 24-hour job, and there's just no opportunity, or there's no time off, right? There's really no time off. Regardless what your situation is and how much support you may have, there's still even this feeling of guilt, in the same way like when you take vacation time from your job, or you're taking some time to yourself, you are still mentally thinking about all the things that you're supposed to be doing. Even though you might be giving yourself a well-deserved rest, or you might not be well and you're in bed, you're still not truly resting. Our minds are always plugged into the things that we have to do all of the time. So that brings me to my direction. I have found that I work best and I align the most. Honestly, let me try that again. When you're building a brand, you usually connect with people who have similar values as you. And because my values, one of them, I should say, it's connected to health and wellness in a big way, I find that I work well a lot with other people in the health and wellness industry, right? I know there are other industries called preferred industries. We could dive into that another time, but I have finally really identified my preferred industries. I don't want to use the word niche, because it's not like I am niching in a way that I'm no longer working with people outside of my niche, but I am really truly looking to align with persons who fall within my preferred industries category. If you don't fall in that category and you are watching this video, still reach out, get in touch. We can talk about your project and see if we align. Okay? But the thing is, when you are clear on your values as a person, especially your business values, you find that you align with people like that. And when you find people who are aligned to you, it just makes for a better working relationship. They are the perfect fit for you, and you are the perfect fit to be their service provider. It's like you just get each other. So I've just decided to lean in on where I feel called, where I feel most aligned. And that's why I say it's not a pivot. The service offerings are the same, but the way I deliver them might look differently, right? I'm setting up my offerings in a way that aligns with building a sustainable business. So yeah, we still have website design, we still have branding, but the way that I deliver it might look differently because of the way I'm packaging it up to support a sustainable business, not just from a profitability perspective, but from a perspective of taking health and wellness and integration or balance into consideration, right? I know I never aligned when I worked in agencies to work past 7 p.m. at the job, having to work at an agency where they expect you to work all these extra hours and then you're not going home till 2, 3 in the morning. Like, this is real. This is what happens in the industry. And don't get me wrong, doesn't mean that I don't work those hours in my business, but that's because I took a nap in the day, right? That does not happen in agency life. You're still working around the clock from 9 a.m. to 5 p.m. or 8 to 4:30, which my last job was. And then they still want you to work extra hours because the client just dropped something. Yeah, I'm sorry, it's a no for me. So, in recent years, I have really reflected on the clients I've worked with. A lot of them were health and wellness professionals, coaches, persons in the beauty industry, in the beauty space, everything to just kind of deal with taking care of ourselves. Like, beauty might sound superficial, but it is a form of self-care. So everything that kind of falls in those categories, even like home, I tend to work with like architects, people who deal with building and construction. You might think, how is that related to wellness? Well, we need a nice space to live in, right? We need to put a roof over our head, and then everything that surrounds building a safe, secure place to live and call your own. All of that falls under the types of industries that I tend to work really well with, that align with the type of work that I enjoy doing. Everything, as you really sit down and you think about the common thread, you start to realize and pinpoint, wow, this is my lane, right? This is my lane. So I want to challenge you today to really sit down and think about, what are my passions, even within my personal life, because then you would start to see that that actually is useful information in how you navigate building your own business and your own brand. So now that I've shared my story and my journey with wellness as a core value into my brand, I want to share with you a couple tips of how you can integrate more wellness into your business. Okay, you don't have to have wellness to be like a core value in your brand, or it doesn't have to look like me where it's a big part of my messaging. But all business owners can benefit from integrating more wellness into their business. This is, I mean, come on, we are not robots, okay? We are not robots. You are a human being. Human beings are behind your business. There are human beings behind your team if you have a team. All right? Everybody behind the business, from the owner straight down to your external contractors, or you may have a salaried team. Every business is not just driven by technology, but it's also driven by human beings. And human beings need time to pause, to reflect, to recharge, in the same way our phones need time to plug in and charge up. If they're not charged up, they're depleted. They either overheat or they shut down. Then they can't work, then they can't function. So think of you like that. Think of your business like that. That if everyone is burnt out and they shut down, the business is going to suffer. So this isn't just for wellness brands. This isn't just for people who want to make wellness a core value. Wellness should be somewhere there, right? So I want to dive into a couple tips of how you can incorporate more wellness into your brand. So the first tip is to acknowledge and identify. One thing about me is I have learned to embrace my bandwidth. I used to compare myself to my peers. So the same friend that I mentioned earlier in this podcast, she was someone who could show up the next day having worked all night, or having modeled the night before for a particular gig, and function the next day on 2 to 3 hours of sleep. Even in my early 20s, I could not do that, much less for where I am today, right? And I recognize that. I recognize and I know what my limits are, because I've tried it. I used to feel like, man, I must be soft if I can't, just keep going. And it's like, why do we tell ourselves, or why did I tell myself that I needed to keep going, or I needed to be able to function on 2 hours or 3 hours of sleep, which people often did. Even if it wasn't for work, they might have went and partied the night before, and then they get up and they go to work the next day. I mean, as you should, you do what you need to do because you went out and party and you have work in the morning. However, in my case, it could be avoided. In my case, it wasn't that I went out and partied the night before. I was comparing myself to someone else who had the bandwidth to do that. Even though it's not healthy, some people have the bandwidth. You need to recognize what your bandwidth is and figure out your systems that you're going to put into place and how you're going to structure your business. How are you going to structure how many calls you schedule in a day, in a week? What are your working hours? What are your working days? Am I going to have weekends off? Is it important for me to not work on the weekends? For me, I've trained myself from very early on. I think it was around 2017, 18. I made that a routine because when I started, I made the mistake of constantly working all the time. And I realized that that wasn't working out. So now, even if I try to work on the weekends, because my body and my mind is trained to not work on the weekend unless I'm trying to finish a deadline or something, I am definitely not client facing on the weekend. Like, my brain goes into domestic mode. I'm with my children. I'm washing clothes. I am cooking. I am restocking. Like, there are things that I need to do as well on the weekend. It's not just about resting, but it's about giving space away from my business to tend to my other responsibilities. So it is important to build these boundaries into your business via way of having these systems, having working hours, etc., etc. Of course, there are times that we need to be flexible by all means, but like I said, your first step is to identify what your bandwidth is and acknowledge it for what it is. Don't try to fight it. So on the point of not trying to fight it, you want to accept. You want to accept, like, okay, these are my limitations. So how can I get the most out of my day? How can I be the most efficient using the tools and systems that I have in front of me so that I could grow a sustainable business, one that provides excellent customer service, customer experience for my clients, and just provides the best product or service possible. It's all about optimizing, right? It's not about trying to do the most, trying to take on the most, and running your blood to water, but it's about recognizing, okay, if this is my capacity, how can I use this capacity to its fullest potential? Before that, I have no capacity and I am burnt out and I collapse. So we do this by creating a plan, right? You can find tools. There are tons of tools that you can use to be more efficient. Optimize by streamlining your processes and your systems as much as possible on the back end. It really helps to productize your business, especially what I mean is, it's really important to productize your services, because when you have to stop and create things custom all of the time, that actually is giving yourself double work, because you're creating something new even though it's the same service every single time. Create packages that are profitable and sustainable, that you could rinse and repeat, rinse and repeat, rinse and repeat. It takes some time to figure that out, and I do help clients figure that out via my brand intensives and VIP days. So if you are interested in that, I will leave some information in the show notes somewhere, but there is a strategy to that as well. All right, but you want to streamline your processes, develop rinse and repeatable templates for yourself. You can buy them. You could even develop them for yourselves. It's totally up to you. But these are a couple strategies that you can sit and consider as you make plans. The next thing you want to be mindful of is overcommitment. I know sometimes, especially when business is slow and we start to have things come our way, we want to say yes to everything. We find ourselves in this scarcity mindset where it's like, if I say no to this, I don't know when the next thing is going to come. But we have to be mindful not to overcommit. And on that point, overcommitting doesn't just mean saying no to things, but it also means saying no to things that you once said yes to. I know that one is hard because you don't want to disappoint people. And it sucks. It sucks to disappoint people, but we also really and truly have to be realistic. Sometimes overcommitment or ensuring that you don't put too much on your plate requires constant assessment. Again, it comes just like a phone overheating versus, well, yes, you become overheated and so the phone depletes. It gets hot and so the battery dies faster. Just a few weeks ago, I had a moment of feeling overwhelmed, right? So you kind of see the correlation. Overcommitment equals overwhelm, right? And I just find that I had so many things circling in my head that I needed to get done. I look at my calendar and there isn't enough white space. If you don't know what white space is, I might get to that before this episode is out. But I just have this level of self-awareness where I'm like, something isn't right here. There's too much on my plate. But before I could get to that point where I could think things out clearly and logically, I will feel overwhelmed and I would just can't function. I can't do anything. So that means I'm not being productive. But that is my brain signaling to me I needed to stop and I needed to work through this. And I would sit and I would think about it and I'd be like, too much is going on. Something isn't working here. This is not working. And that's when I will take inventory that I have to cut some stuff, right? There comes a point where you have too much on your plate and no amount of processes, systems, tools, apps, ChatGPTs are going to help. The only thing you can do is review and assess and figure out what I can cut, what I could probably move around, push down. Because sometimes you don't have to take it off your plate, but it just means I can't do this right now. And once you recognize what you need to clear off of your plate or move it around to create more space and white space into your day or your week, you can then go to the persons that you are obligated to and communicate to them like, hey, do we have some wiggle room here? Can we push this down a bit? Is this even urgent? Is this even really important? Can we just shelve this for a later date? And there may not be any external person. That person may just be you. You can stand in front of your whiteboard or open up your Asana and be like, is this important? Do I need to do this right now? Is this a project that I could shelve for a later date? Sometimes it requires that we have to reassess what we have going on. What is of most priority? What do I have to take care of today in this moment? And when it comes to the disappointment, you just kind of have to learn to sit with that. You're going to have to learn to be okay with disappointing others. And you're not just going to be like, I can't help you with this anymore. But it's all in how you communicate. And if you can find another way to support them indirectly, which might mean, hey, I can't help you with this right now, but I can help you with it next week. Or, hey, I can help you with this, but I can't do the calls anymore, but I could support you via voice notes and I could just like respond when convenient. It could just mean that it looks different how you support someone, or maybe you get someone else to help them with it until your load becomes a little bit lighter. All right, so don't be afraid to reevaluate what those commitments may look like. You may not need to take it off the table entirely. It just means that it needs to look different, but you need to clear up what's on your plate. Now, my next tip for integrating wellness into your business so that you could build a better you for a better business is to prioritize self-care. Now, self-care sounds like a luxury, but self-care isn't a luxury, and self-care doesn't necessarily have to mean luxury experiences. It does not mean that you have to go to the Hilton, the Hyatt. It could simply mean taking a walk outside for a breath of fresh air around 1 p.m. or in the afternoon when the sun cools down, somewhere in your workday that works for you. It could mean you take a break around 4 or 5 and then you hop back on and you do work later on in the evening. You'll figure out a schedule that works for you where you can incorporate little slices of self-care throughout the day. Recently, I shared a story of me grabbing my favorite cheesecake from Haagen-Dazs because it's the only place that makes cheesecake the way that I like it in my local area. And I was craving it for a while. And again, I had committed to something to that on that day, but I still found time to give myself a treat. I allowed myself to leave home a little bit earlier on my way to go support someone. And I popped into Haagen-Dazs, got a slice of the cheesecake, and had it in my car. I don't know if you've seen like on Reels and on TikTok that self-care is just sitting in your car. It wasn't intentionally supposed to be a self-care moment of sitting in my car, but as moms, we have those moments a lot where we pull up to the drive-through, whether it's at some fast food restaurant or in this case, a cheesecake. We grab something that we like and we just sit there and we enjoy it because sometimes that's the only alone time that we get. You know, especially as women, whether we're moms or not, we always tend to be the caretakers in our lives. And oftentimes, we really need to take a moment to take care of ourselves. If there are any men watching this, this is not shade to men, but it's just a fact. We tend to be. Doesn't mean that men don't take care or are caretakers in their lives. It just means that it's usually or tends to be the women that are the caretakers, right? Whether they are taking care of their ailing mom or elderly mom or aunt or uncle or their sisters or their cousins' children. It usually is the woman, right? But props to the men out there. These tips are actually applicable across the board. So yeah, self-care can look like just taking a walk, having a moment to sip some tea, your morning coffee, some journaling. You know, it's about mindfulness, having those mindfulness moments to just detach your brain from thinking about work. And it doesn't just mean work, just thinking about responsibilities, thinking about what needs to be paid, what error needs to be done, and your brain constantly calculating and working and working. Just take a mindful moment to clear your mind because trust me, it is so worth it when you take just 5 to 10 minutes, at least once a day, more if you can, because it allows you to reset and then you can bring new life and new energy into the things that you actually do need to get done as well. All right. So it could simply be doing your nails. And when I say do your nails, I don't mean as a nail tech. You could just get some polish. You could do something fun for yourself. Another thing that I did recently is I bought these lashes, these cluster lashes, and I wanted to try them out because one of the things that I genuinely enjoy is wearing lashes, but I never liked or could put on strip lashes. And I figured, let me see how I could tolerate the cluster ones because I absolutely love individual lashes. But I just don't have the maintenance. I just don't have the patience for the high maintenance of it. All right. So I still love them. I'll still do them. But I love that I found these cluster lashes as another option to enjoy having, like, you know, lashes. And when doing that, it was just something, my body immediately feels the difference in the task versus sitting at my computer tapping away, designing, creating, strategizing, planning, doing all of those things. But it was nice to like develop a new skill, do something for fun. It just felt so therapeutic. It's kind of like the effect of doing adult coloring or painting. All of these things are very therapeutic, and these are low cost, effective ways to find and integrate some self-care into your day. Again, self-care, wellness, all of these things, freedom, are gonna look different for you. So these are just some things to kind of guide you into finding what works for you. What is your version of health and wellness and well-being? What do you need to fill your cup? No pun intended. My next tip is the big B word: boundaries. We hear about boundaries on social media all of the time, but the key to health and well-being is the big B. That is one of the major ones, is knowing when to say no, knowing when to take things off your plate, knowing when you're not going to be working, knowing, not just knowing, but implementing and communicating, like, these are my days for client facing calls, these are my days for X, these are my times for Y. All of those things are boundaries. Boundaries is what protects your peace. I did a post on social media a little while back, and I think it was eight boundaries for entrepreneurs. Things like having contracts. All of these things are forms of creating wellness in your business, because the opposite of not having wellness in your business isn't just burnout, but it's stress. We all know that stress is the number one killer. Entrepreneurs are more prone to chronic diseases. We are also more prone to anxiety and depression. Why do we have anxiety? Because we probably didn't have a contract, and now you're having a client who's acting crazy in your DMs or in your emails, and you're trying to figure out how to reel them back in. All of these things could be avoided when you have boundaries built into your business via your processes, your systems. And that comprises of things like a contract, working hours, turnaround times, rush fees if somebody wants to come with something last minute, or sometimes it could be not having rush fees. It simply means I'm not going to do anything rushed. You're going to have to wait this turnaround time, because sometimes those rush fees aren't even worth the peace of mind. So yeah, these are all things that you need to consider when building out your own boundaries for your business. Boundaries don't mean that you are being mean. Boundaries don't mean that you are delivering poor customer service. So don't let anybody make you feel any type of way for having processes and systems. All right, so my next tip is the big social media one. Everyone is complaining about Instagram, social media, and the algorithms. Those are the main words: social media, Instagram, algorithm. And people are burnt out and tired. How about we have some boundaries around how we make social media makes us feel? How about we develop some boundaries that I am no longer going to allow social media to run my life? Yes, I'm building a business, but that doesn't mean social media, specifically Instagram, is going to rule my business. At the end of the day, you're going to have to get a grip and recognize I am a business owner, and Instagram is just one platform, right? It's also one way to gain business. It is just one form of marketing. At some point, you're going to have to, just like being overwhelmed, you're going to have to stop and assess and adjust. Is this working for me? And if you really find that it's no longer working for you, and you just decide, I am no longer interested because there's just so many changes, you can find alternatives to find your customers and to find your clients. It could mean your relationship with the platform changes. Maybe you have money or you have the capital, I should say, that you want to invest in ads. You want to invest in a course that could show you how to get the most bang out of your ads budget, so that you could detach from trying to perform all the time on these platforms. We really need to step back and stop letting Instagram rule our lives. The fact of the matter is, It's no longer 2016, it's no longer 2018, it's no longer 2020. The algorithm has changed every single year in the past how many years? It's time to also accept not just the bandwidth that we have when it comes to our business, but it's also time to accept that the platform is just different. The platform has just changed. Do you want to continue here, or do you want to, at the end of the day, realize, look, I have a business to build and I need to just stop focusing on what Instagram is doing. Instagram is doing what it needs to do for its business, what they think is best. That's to be determined. We don't know, but it's not our business. Our business is to figure out how to connect my service or my product to my customer or my client. All right, that's all your business is, to connect this with this. Everything else that doesn't help support that is noise, and it's just leaving you burnt out. So my next tip is to find sustainable marketing strategies. And that looks like developing your back-end systems. I hate to break it to you, but it also means having a website. And what I mean by that is not just, okay, well, get a website, throw it up, and that's that. But when I say having systems, you can have, well, you can, to some degree, you could have systems from social media to becoming a buyer. But we already have recognized that we have no control over these platforms. We have no control over the algorithm. But what you can do and take, I honestly feel like having a website and developing an SEO strategy and creating content there, creating long form content on YouTube, creating long form content on podcasts, and optimizing that content to be found, optimizing that content that even if you distribute it on social media, it's evergreen content that's going to work for you from now until whenever, because the information will always apply unless something drastically changes in your business and there's this drastic change in direction. The information, for the most part, is going to apply. So you could repurpose that info over and over and over again. If you go on my contact form at cassiamarina.com/contact, there's a podcast episode embedded there. Anybody who might be considering working with me and maybe they're on the fence, they could go listen to that episode. And that information works as nurture content to make them feel more comfortable in, this person knows what they're talking about. This person is saying something that's resonating. This person is someone that I relate to, which equals them feeling more comfortable with working with you. We have to think more strategically about our content. Too much of us got swept up in the social media circus, and we started to create content that was too short-sighted. And that those pieces of content do serve a purpose. It's top of the funnel content. It's content that gets eyes on you, visibility. But a lot of us are just stuck at the top of the funnel and we didn't think about the strategy going down. It's easier to create visibility content up here than it is to create the long form, because once you take the time and the effort to create that long form content and you are consistent with it, you can always create the visibility content anytime on a day-to-day basis. You could make that really quickly on any day, but that type of content has an expiration date versus the long form, and you distribute that long form into smaller pieces of content that can also act as visibility content. You create this content from a more sustained, energetic place so that you avoid burnout, and it's just hella more strategic. And now my last tip for integrating more wellness into your business is simply following other creators who are in the wellness space. Picking up books so that you can always be approaching your business from a place of keeping your health and well-being in mind, because I believe that every business should really be thinking about their health and wellness all the time, through and through. Again, there will be seasons where we lose sight of that. But again, tuning into creators, to podcasts, reading certain books as part of your health plan, even, will always help bring you back to this place of being grounded in your health and wellness in mind. Now, at some point, I am going to either link in the show notes below, or I will do another blog post or newsletter rounding up my favorite books, my favorite creators, podcasts that I recommend to help with this. So definitely subscribe to my newsletter that will also be linked below, and let us just stay connected. So those are my tips to help you integrate more wellness and keep you top of mind as well as you build your business. So that is all for today. If you enjoyed this podcast episode, definitely share this with a fellow entrepreneur or a friend, because whether you are in business or you might be a highly driven person in your career, I believe that you can benefit from this episode. Connect with me on Instagram, LinkedIn, and most importantly, subscribe to my email list. I will leave the link to subscribe in the show notes below, and click that subscribe button if you're watching this on YouTube, because I have lots more wholesome content like this to come. I'm really trying not to be a stranger on YouTube. It does take more effort to create long form video, but it's, as mentioned in this episode, it is well worth it. So that's all for now, and I'll catch you on the next episode.